We're going to be focusing our attention on another key aspect of education for this final part of this morning. That is learning to protect our ecosystems and our planet. As our next guests are here to talk about accelerating the environmental transition. Evolving education to accelerate and support the environmental transition is a critical part of the Learning Planet's actions and efforts. And here to tell us more about their work is Leonora Dowley. Leonora, you're head of partnerships at the Learning Planet Alliance and lead of the Teachers for the Planet program. Leonora, welcome to LPTV.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
So during the festival, you'll be launching the Teachers for the Planet program with the Alliance partners, Teach for All and the Kehkashan Foundation. Can you tell us more about the program, please?
Yes. So we're really excited about it. It's a program that has been in development for a year, following last year's Learning Planet Festival, where we invited teachers to share with us their dream lessons, their ideas for what they would love to teach if they had the chance. And hundreds of teachers came to us and told us how important they felt it was to address the climate crisis in their teaching, in their classrooms and in their schools. But they also said that quite often they didn't have the time, the resources or the support to do so. And they also said that they felt isolated, that they felt they were the only people who were trying to address this, and they felt alone. So they asked if there was something we could do about it. So with some of our alliance partners, Teach for All and the Kehkashan Foundation, plus lots of international partners like UNESCO, the OECD, the Education Commission, and lots of national and local partners, we have developed this program called Teachers for the Planet. So the program understands that teachers have a vital role to play in addressing the climate crisis, but that they feel alone or they are unsupported. It also recognises that their voice is very important in the education discussion, but often they are left out of that, particularly at big international events. And it recognises that it's very difficult for them to find often examples of good practice that they can take for themselves, and that they are not in collaboration with policymakers in the way that they could be. So the program has two components. One is to build a community, which we will be doing this year through monthly virtual and in-person meetings through our Learning Circle. And it will also be putting together an online repository to inspire action. So we'll be collecting examples from teachers of climate action in their classrooms and schools that we will be sharing at COP28 in November. Finally, the programme is supporting UNESCO's Greening Education Partnership, which is a programme launched by UNESCO this year, which will run for a few years. And we're looking for teachers who are interested in forming collaborations with policymakers, attending these big events throughout the year, including COP28, the UN General Assembly and the Schools 2030 conference in June, and who would like to be part of this online repository to share examples of good work and to share with their networks.
Fantastic. So this Teachers for the Planet program, it's pretty complete. It's happening throughout the year. There's a lot going on in there. You've just mentioned some of those actions and events. How can people get involved? How can people join to become a part of this fantastic program?
Well, it's really easy. The first thing that we'd love people to do is to join our launch event this Saturday, the 28th of January, at the end of the Learning Planet Festival at 2 p.m. CET. All of the details are on the festival website. So we'd love people to join where they can find out more and they can sign up to be part of the program. If you'd like to sign up to be part of the program, there is a link on the festival website to the Teachers for the Planet program, and there is a link to sign up so that you get all of the information. The third thing we'd love people to do is to tell us about really inspiring examples of teaching to address the climate crisis in their classrooms, so that we are able to showcase those for policymakers throughout the year.
Thank you so much, Leonora. Thank you for joining us in the studio, telling us so much about this program. You've received all of the information here. Make sure you do check that out. And we look forward to seeing you, Leonora, in some of the other sessions focused on learning for the environment here at the Learning Planet Festival. Now, how about you? How often do you think about protecting the environment? Is it something you think about daily, weekly, from time to time, or like us, is it all the time, non-stop, even when you're asleep? Click on the QR code next to this live stream to share your thoughts with us and answer this question. Tell us how often you think about the environment. We'll leave the question up there for a while so you have a chance to reply, and don't forget to encourage your friends to reply too. Right now, I'm going to hand over to Edward Stevenett, Project Manager at the LearningPlanet Alliance, who is with Kehkashan Basu of the Green Hope Foundation. Ed, Kehkashan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Absolute pleasure to be with you today and to be able to speak to you, Kehkashan. You're an environment and human rights activist since a very young age, so only 12 when you created your foundation to address the severe lack of inclusivity of children, young people, women, and marginalized communities in the sustainable development process. Now operating in almost 30 countries and mobilizing youth and adults worldwide, which is truly incredible. Would love just to open to you first with this question that the challenge to address the climate crisis is enormous. And accelerating the transition, I think we all now know, is a must. In your view, what should we do to involve more people in the fight against climate change?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me here today. I think that's a really important question because the very basic thing that can be done is education for sustainable development being normalized in every level of learning, right from the elementary school level. Very often, and what we see with our work at Green Hope Foundation is that there is this fundamental lack of awareness of not just what is going on, but what each individual or each family, for example, can do to act to mitigate climate change within their own communities. And because of that, we are not seeing that level of action. And when these people, without that lack of awareness, grow up and get into leadership positions or join companies and governments, that lack of awareness is still there in their professional lives as well, in which they're unable to turn into climate action. So education, and particularly education for sustainable development, is the absolute basic need to make sure that we're able to take actions to address the climate crisis.
Thank you. And your initiative started very locally as well, and you really have this practical, very concrete approach to climate education through such grassroots local activities. How do you think small-scale local changes can bring the changes at the global scale? Where is the link for you in that?
Well, just like every drop makes an ocean, our actions, our small actions for climate justice, they're the exact same way. We started out our work by ensuring that our education for sustainable development, our climate and environmental education, inspired young people and really all members of society to take actions in their own communities. And today we have now planted 1 million trees over the last 10 years. And it's not just planting the trees, it's about ensuring that they're indigenous fruit trees that are reforesting land. They are providing people with sources of sustenance. It's all of these myriad benefits that come from imparting that education and then turning that into action, and then seeing how those small actions all around the world add up. So no one action is going to create change just like that in one day. That is not how it works. We need to understand that all of our actions together will create this better world. And that includes ground level actions, that includes policy changes, that includes literally every single sector of society coming together with their own unique experiences and adding their voices and their actions to this fight for climate justice.
Thanks so much, Kehkashan. And you've this has come up a lot in the sessions today around this holistic approach to climate education as well. And you're a very vocal advocate on international stages, notably with the UN. How do you think that this activity of advocacy at an international stage is important to accelerate the transition and change this system?
I think that it's very important because there's often a gap that exists between what happens at the highest levels of policymaking versus what happens at the ground level. And at Green Hope Foundation, we work to bridge that gap because it's very important that these different processes, they do not function, they should not function in their little silos because then nothing is going to get done. We need everything, as I mentioned earlier, we need all of these different levels and areas of society to really come together. And that is exactly what we do to bring the voices of those who are most often left behind to the highest levels of policymaking, to the United Nations, so that the policymakers there are aware of what is happening at the ground level. And there we take our teachings with our networking, with speaking with various ministers and government officials, then we take those learnings to the ground level because we know what policy changes might be coming, and then we implement our solutions in accordance with that, and then foster these really strong partnerships between government, private sector, civil society, and other sections of society as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And just last but not least, what recommendations do you have for youth who wish to start acting for the climate?
I would first say that I think it's very easy to play the blame game because, yes, there are a lot of people who've kind of facilitated where we are at right now with the climate crisis, but the blame game is the easiest thing to do. What we as young people need to understand is that we have the power to bring about change. We have the power to go out there and plant a mangrove or inspire someone else to act, or just simply spread that awareness about why it's so important to take action and understand that you can take action just within that small space, and that can grow into something really, really big. So my main advice would be to just move away from the blame game, educate yourself and spread that education to your family, to your friends, to your community, and harness that change-making potential that we all have to bring about change. And most importantly, localize your action, and together we can create a more sustainable world.
I'm going to capture that little bit of advice and take that with me in the week and the year ahead. Thanks so much for your time, Kehkashan. We'll pass back to you, Kristen, for the next.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to Ed, and especially to Kehkashan for telling us about your life's work as a climate education activist. There are thousands of young people like Kehkashan around the planet taking action on the climate crisis. And you're going to meet some more of them right now as we stay focused on accelerating the environmental transition here on LPTV. Our next guest is joining us from Greece, and she is a member of one of the most widely followed protest and action groups focused on the climate crisis. That is the Fridays for Future movement. Started by Greta Thunberg back in August 2018, Fridays for Future is now active in 7,500 cities. It's present on each continent and counts over 14 million engaged members around the globe. Eleni Kaloudi is one of those members, and she is the representative of Fridays for Future Climate Education. I'm going to hand over to her now to tell us more about the organization's evolution and the campaign that Fridays for Future will be showcasing later this week during the festival. Welcome to LPTV. Eleni, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this amazing introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Eleni. Today, I represent a branch of the Fridays for Future organization, which is Fridays for Future Climate Education, which started approximately towards 2019 and trying to accelerate climate education in schools worldwide. Let me just say that it's a pleasure to be taking part in such a refreshing festival and between such amazing speakers, maybe not amongst, but between. I would like to jump, though, to this session's topic on accelerating the environmental transition and focus on our team's specialization, which is accelerating the environmental transition through climate education. Given that today it is the International Day for Education, I think it's quite fitting. So our vision has been that climate education is a comprehensive curriculum rooted in sustainability and fostering humanity's connection to nature. However we can frame that. It aims to provide a holistic understanding, as Ed mentioned just before, of the ongoing and biodiversity crisis, and facilitate the development of sustainable innovations and solutions, empower learners and all that. But what we focus more, I believe, as a group is accelerating a social transition and where students and learners can create sustainable transition practices themselves and not just be passive receptors of it. I think that's one of the most important points. And I would like to discuss two main ideas today. The first one is that through Fridays for Future Climate Education, we really inspire the mobility of ideas. That is one of our goals. Acceleration usually assumes a linear understanding of the transition, that we start from a point A to reach a final point B. And while it is of utmost importance to reach our climate targets, we also need to be able to reevaluate them and push forward even when they are achieved or when we think that they are achieved. That goes for an international or a national level. That Fridays for Future works in all those sectors in any case. So the environmental transition for our organization is not just a rigid goal, it is a constant and unending process, a relationship with nature, a relationship with institutions. It's just that at this moment, it's in its most crucial point. So climate education comes to reform this idea and help reimagine problems and solutions under alternative views for a just social transition and a just environmental transition, not just an accelerated one. For example, speaking about something that is not a linear progress, we can think about one of our demands, which is the revaluation, so valuing traditional and indigenous knowledge being crucial. Ultimately, this acceleration is what we're looking for, that of seeking learners across age groups to be able to adapt over changing social realities and to their environment, because that is the condition that we're dealing with. And the second element that I would like to quickly note is that of alliance forming. And I believe the previous speaker also mentioned that. But now it has to work on a local level between our organization as well, because so far activists are experts in mobilizing ideas and people on the top level, so ministerial ideas, etc. That has been our campaign so far. But now we need to move also on the implementers and start speaking about implementation, teachers, public officials, local officials. In Greece specifically, we cannot speak about education without speaking about education syndicates, and that is just as simple as that. So to conclude, perhaps, climate education is a way of accelerating environmental transition, but itself, climate education needs an acceleration. Alliances and events such as this, or our event, which takes place on the 28th, that discusses, throughout the festival, that discusses failures, successes, and what we wished we knew before starting our activism, is just a step for constant action that we will be needing to listen to throughout this period and normalize talking about implementation, not just a constant acceleration of this idea, which is called transitioning to a new system. So I believe that is all for our part.
Thanks so much to you, Eleni, and to Fridays for Future for joining us. Be sure to check out their online workshop this Saturday at 12 o'clock Central European Time to learn more about education, climate education, and their advocacy experiences. Now, who doesn't like donuts? Our next guest is a global influencer who has got industry and world leaders thinking and talking about donuts. Yes, you heard that right. As the co-founder of the Doughnut Economics Action Lab, Kate Raworth has created a revolutionary way of balancing human needs and planetary boundaries using her Doughnut economics model. To tell us more about her work and the Doughnut Economics Action Lab, let's now hear from Kate Raworth. Kate, over to you.
And it's a big pleasure to be joining you here on the International Day of Education. So yes, I'm going to talk about the one donut that actually turns out to be good for us. So the warning is you do not need to eat donuts. The best ones are conceptual. They help us transform the way we see the world. And to do this, I'm going to share my screen and show you this donut in action. So here it is. Think of it as a compass for 21st century prosperity. We need a compass this century to guide us in a very different direction from the one we've been going in. And that's what the donut aims to do. So imagine humanity's use of Earth's resources radiating out from the center of this picture. That means that the hole in the middle of the donut is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life. That's where people do not have the health and education, housing, political voice, income, equity that every person has a claim to. And these 12 social dimensions of the donut, I drew them from the Sustainable Development Goals. That means that all the governments in the world have already agreed that every person in the world has a claim, a right to meet these essentials. Leave no one falling short. So as we aim to meet our essential needs, we start to convert Earth's resources into buildings and cities and farmland and clothing and food and electronics. And we begin to put so much pressure on the planet that we risk tipping her out of balance. We risk going over planetary boundaries. And these are the 9 life-supporting systems that make life work on this only known living planet in the universe. It's like having a stable climate, a protective ozone layer, abundant biodiversity, recharging water in the rivers and the lakes, healthy oceans. So we must not overshoot the ecological ceiling either. So in the simplest of language, leave no one in the hole, but don't overshoot Earth's limits. We need to find a way to thrive in that green donut-shaped space in between where everybody can meet the needs of themselves within the means of the living planet. And if you think this shape of the donut, this dynamism between the inside and the outside, it's very different from the idea of growth that lies at the heart of the Western economic mindset. And when I first drew it 10 years ago, I was amazed by how strongly people responded to it. So many people were excited, motivated. This is how I've always felt thriving would look, but I've never seen the picture before, they said. And I looked at diagrams and pictures and icons, symbols drawn by many, many other cultures, indigenous cultures the world over. And I was amazed that so many of them reflect this very same sense of dynamic circle. So dynamism within a circle of life. And I offer the donut as almost a recovery for the Western mindset that's been captured by the idea that growth is good. We need to learn to move from growing to thriving and recover a wisdom that many other indigenous cultures have long, long known. If balance and thriving in balance is where we want to get to, we're very, very far from that right now. As all of the red in this picture shows, this is the global donut. So billions of people are falling short on the essentials of life. 11% of people worldwide don't have enough food to eat every day. That's why that little red wedge goes 11% of the way towards the center on food. We want to eliminate that red in all of the social dimensions, and there's a lot to do. But we have to do it at the same time as coming back within many planetary boundaries that we have already overshot. So this is a double whammy of a challenge. And no generation before us has seen and understood this challenge. I believe that all of our children, no matter what age we are here listening and talking today, all of our children will ask us one day, well, what did you do once that you knew, once that you saw this challenge? Because there's no way that last century's economic theory and last century's government policies and last century's business models and last century's lifestyles are going to turn this story around. They weren't designed for this. They will not be the solution to this. If you want to see it in headlines, every day in the news, we hear the crisis of pressure that we are putting on Earth's life support systems. And we also know that they redouble back and undermine human well-being. They are a profound impact and threat to our ability to thrive. And the richest 1% of people in the world own half of the world's wealth. This is a phenomenally unequal and degrading living world. And ours is the generation to see that and to turn it around with new thinking and new action. I'm showing you the global donut, but let me take it down to the national level. Here are just 4 out of many national donuts. And what you can see, let's start with Malawi, on around $1,500 per person per year. a lot of social shortfall, a lot of red in the middle of that circle. Many, many people still have not met their most basic needs. And yet the country is not overshooting any of the planetary boundaries in terms of its share of global resource use. China faces a double challenge, significant social shortfall and significant overshoot as well. That's a double whammy of a challenge to turn around. Let's jump to the United States. High inequality, that EQ, that's inequality, and that registers across many different social issues. And of course, almost the circle is blue, but we know that there is deprivation in the midst of plenty, even in high-income countries. But it gets hidden when we look at the data at a global scale. But look at that ecological overshoot of the United States. It's massively overshooting planetary boundaries and has an enormous task of turning that story around. Let's come back to Denmark now. And I could have chosen Sweden or Norway or the Netherlands. People say, but surely in Scandinavia and that part of the world, those countries are living in the donut, aren't they? No, they're not. No, Denmark has a blue circle. It's doing better than most countries on meeting the basic needs of all its people. But it is massively overshooting planetary boundaries, just like all high-income countries. So look at the GDP per capita across the bottom of this, going from $1,500 to $64,000. GDP, or national income, is not a measure of success in the 21st century because none of these countries is where it needs to be. Is there any country that lives in the donut? Not yet, but one is closer than any other. It's Costa Rica. Closer to meeting the needs of its people, almost within the means of the planet. And you know what? It hasn't actually really been trying to get there yet. So this gives us hope. Now let's take these national donuts and put them on a scatter plot, over 50 of them here. The place we all want to be is in that sweet spot, the top left-hand corner, where we meet the needs of all people, but do it while coming back within the means of the living planet. So first of all, there's Costa Rica, closer than any other. But let's notice all the low-income countries that are sitting down low in the picture. They need to meet the needs of people for the first time without overshooting planetary boundaries. Middle-income countries, an unprecedented challenge too. China, Turkey, Russia. How are they going to both meet the needs of their people for the first time while already coming back within planetary boundaries? And then the high-income nations. Hello, United States, Canada, and Australia. That is some overshoot you have going on over there. I mean, let's take this as a chance of saying that there's no way that any high-income country should be calling itself a developed nation. There's nothing developed about overshooting planetary boundaries. These countries, too, have an unprecedented journey back towards the donut. So we need transformative policies and practice. And let's remember that though these countries stand separately on a scatter plot, they are profoundly connected by histories of colonialism and military power and corporate power, by trade and finance rules, by resource extraction, and the current and future impacts of climate change. So we need transformation within every country and between nations. And that's why at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, we are working with change makers who come to us and say, oh, we're putting these ideas into practice in our town, our city, in our classroom, in our town council meeting, in our business, in our community. We are going to become regenerative by design and distributive by design and move towards the donut. And if that sounds exciting to you, I invite you to look at our platform, doughuteconomics.org. You can join and become a member, or you can just browse. There's lots of tools, all freely available to anybody to use, including some tools for downscaling the donut to where you are. We simply ask that you share back your innovations and share back your experience, because this is how we learn together. So I invite you to work with us at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. Let's get into the donut. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Kate Raworth for telling us and showing us her revolutionary donut economics model and how this is helping us better respect the planetary boundaries and for us to be able to create an environmental transition path to the future. And thank you to all of you for responding to our questions and telling us how often you think about protecting the environment. We asked you if it's daily, weekly, from time to time, or like us, all the time, non-stop, even when you're asleep. I checked the results just whilst Kate was with us there. Nearly 50% of you are thinking about our environment on a daily basis, and an additional 16%, like us, are thinking about it all the time, day and night. And we're going to continue right now thinking about our environment with our next session, which brings together a great group of experts from around the world to discuss accelerating the environmental transition. Gail Mangi, who is the Executive VP at the LearningPlanet Institute, is going to be leading this discussion. So over to you and all of your guests. Gail.
And welcome everyone to this conversation, to the discussion. I think it's going to be quite an interesting conversation, as we would like to discuss the possibility to create bottom-up approach and what is it that we can do as a person, as a citizen, as a teacher, a student, and so most of the time we represent the action on the environment as something that needs, come from the scientists that explain how bad the situation is, and then they translate that to the policymakers that create the frame and execute so that we are all safe. And unfortunately, we know for at least 50 years that this is not working that way, or not fast enough, and not well enough, and that in addition to the top-down approach, we need also a bottom-up approach where we can develop the ability of people to understand what is at stake, to find possibilities to act, or to reflect on what can be done, and collaborate with others, and create energy, means, all kinds of things. And so to discuss what is it that we can do, and to discuss what is it that is required to increase this bottom-up approach and foster those bottom-up approach, we have an extraordinary panel, and I feel privileged to host this discussion with representative of different people from different institutions on different voices. And so, starting with the youngest, I'm glad that we have Selma Bish with us. Selma, good morning or good evening, as you're in Lebanon, I think. So Selma, she, as you have seen, and if you're not, I ask you to look at the bios of everyone because it's very long bios. Everyone has been achieving so much. So I just pick a few words. And so Selma, you represent the voice of the youth, as you are an activist and a representative of your age. And so we would like to have some of your insight of inspiration. What is it that you found inspiring, and how do you find exciting about this movement that can be created? So I would like to hear from you what you find inspiring that we could that can help us understand what can be done at our local level.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm having the privilege to be the youngest one here. I feel like that's really cool. So thank you so much again for that. Well, to first start that, I would love to say that having involving youth in this is already, for us, is already a huge bonus, because we see it like kind of we don't see you so much involved, and that's actually what we are all time asking. That's exactly what we're asking for most of the times, is to have us more involved, whether in decisional policy making, whether in kind of having our voice more heard, because we're seeing some regions where youth voice is literally neglected. Like what I came from, the MENA region, we're not seeing so much support given to youth. We're not seeing their voice really either heard or even implemented. So for us, like here to just kind of link things together, I would say that to better introduce the system for both youth communities and kind of involve politicians and experts together, that would be like a very good step to take, especially if youth were more involved. We would love to see citizens kind of like want to know more about this global concern, want to get engaged, embrace the new practices that we as youth are both giving, as well as the politicians. Of course, we cannot keep always counting on the politicians because there's also so much work to do, but at the same time, we cannot always keep counting on activists who are trying their best, of course, to advocate the voice of the neglected communities, which is of course, still not enough. But the thing is that we need everyone to get involved. We need to teach everyone that this is a serious global concern that everyone needs to take into account. We need everyone's touch to be added because eventually it is everyone's responsibility to fight this global concern. I know it is too late to kind of end it. However, limiting its impact on certain communities that are being victims of that all time is something that we can all contribute and collaborate with. It can happen with policies. It can happen with us just being there, doing strikes and kind of saying one word to spark the interest of everyone. It can be through workshops where we simplify the CERM to people. It can be through so many things. COVID started and everyone accepted the fact to have a quarantine. So why not climate change is not considered the same thing? It is also a serious concern. It is something that we need to have quarantine for. It is something that we need new practices for, where we have to sacrifice things that we kind of like, but it is for the sake of planet and it is for the sake of humans, and it is high time to prioritize humans over economies and businesses. And I think that only experts and politicians and us, if we all collaborate together, we can make that happen.
And here comes the youth, the voice of the youth with passion and energy and wisdom too. Thank you so much. So, Matthias, as learners and youth would like to be trained and to participate, what the teachers can do, given the fact that you have been, developing things on nature and sustainability for almost 10 years. So, what would be your insight and of what people can do, especially teachers?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And I love the way Selma thinks as big as she does, and this festival is on a global scale. But as a teacher, I think you should start close to the home from the students. So in order to think big, you have to think small first, perhaps, and take small steps, make it local, and show the children in their own area what climate change does to the students and to their own homes. We've made this project called Climate Change in Your Backyard. How can you see that there's climate change going on? Because of, for example, you can see butterflies earlier in our country. You can see leaves coming on the trees way earlier than 30 years ago. So just a small signs nature gives us, which happens every year instead of flooding once, also enough, but too many, but the small things make it visible for the students. I think also it's a heavy topic, right? There's a lot going on, but you have to make it fun as well in a way. So you have to make it scalable and let the children in. It's fun to watch butterflies, and then give the message that the butterflies are now a month earlier than 30 years ago. What's happening? What's going on? And what's the problem behind that? So not just only the problem, but also a way to make them connect with their own home. I think that's really important to inspire and to make it a bigger success.
Thanks very much for this. It reminds me of the feel, imagine, do, and share model of Design for Change. And they start with, kids, I think it's 4 years old. And at every age, they always start the same sequence, which is start by feeling, start by being in your environment, local environment, and see what is it that moves you, where is the energy coming from? Because with that energy, then you can have ideas about what is it that you can do, and then maybe prototype potential solutions at your age or your local level, and then build up and share so that the community is empowered. So it's very really that stemming from the local environment that is really important that you highlight. June, maybe now that we have seen the youth voice and the teachers, since you've been working at the environment system. Education for Sustainable Development at UNESCO. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the policy making, and since you have been aware of a lot of different initiatives. Maybe you have a few that you would like to pick and present to us.
Thank you very much, Gail, and for the invitation, and colleagues. Hi, from UNESCO. So yeah, also building upon what I have just heard from Selma and also Matthijs. From UNESCO, we are really trying to, create a good basis for also supporting our member states. So our first counterparts, of course, those who are sitting in the ministries of education at different levels, at the country level, but also at the local level. And to try to, build up on some evidence, we ran some studies, and I just cite some of the key findings before stepping into one concrete example that I found most inspiring. So I will start with the good news. According to our surveys, 92% of the analyzed policy and curriculum documents included at least one reference to environmental theme. So it is still a progress achieved. But the bad side of the news is only 23% of teachers can explain well how to take action on climate change in their own context. And most importantly, 70% of young people surveyed say that they cannot really explain climate change or can explain its broader principles, but don't know how to handle this in their own context and so on. And more we see that the youth demands, more for learner-centered, experiential type of learning, and really to test out some solutions and to be really empowered to be able to take actions. And having said that, UNESCO is also collecting some good practices. It does not mean that, nothing happens in the world. Luckily, we have a lot of great initiatives, one of which is coming from Peru, which is called Cusi Carce School, which is located in the mountains in Peruvian Andes. And it was founded in 2008 by a small number of, group of parents who took this initiative to launch this school. And it started with 100 students coming from kindergarten level, but also to high school level. And the school offers an educational program through a quite unique curriculum that combines a rich body of ancestral Andean knowledge, but also philosophy and traditions with the pedagogy of Waldorf education, which is actually based on the educational philosophy of Rudolf Steiner, which is quite interesting approach. And this initiative aims at, first of all, preserving, of course, the indigenous, local, ancestral knowledge through offering learning opportunities to children about their notions, like working together, equity, social justice, but also using their own Andean ancestral calendar. Young people, but also adults in the community, try to learn together how to live. I think in Spanish we say buen vivir, which means good living, maybe in English. And in this exercise, both land, but also the community life are really cared for collectively. And this learning program uses also music, dance, weaving, art, and social gathering, and not only to conserve their own culture, but also try to bring everyone in the community and to think about what are the ongoing challenges and how their cultural resources could, respond to those challenges. So it's really like to try out what they learn in that real life context. And of course, they are really, brought to think about, for example, big challenges such as climate change, because it's impacting also their community. Not only the environmental dimension, but the relationships, within the community, including how to relate oneself with others, gender equality, all those notions of everyone's life are really integrated in the good learning mechanism offered by this school, which really found quite concrete. And using, any opportunities to organize some kind of food fair involving young people, adults, and once again, using, for example, organic and sustainable food and really thinking how they can go about this zero plastic use and zero waste and things like that. So we found it quite innovative, participatory. We would like to see that this kind of good practices on the ground be picked up also by policymakers. And that is our job as UNESCO. And we are giving this ESD prize to those really concrete examples on the ground and to try to formulate also at the policy level. So just to start off my intervention quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Thank you for this inspiring example. So it's another, it's a little bit in the same vein as Matthias was presenting. There is something around the ability to for the people to understand locally what is their culture, their needs, their also their ability, what is it that they can act upon. So it's really a matter of restructuring the education system locally to maximize their empowerment or agentivity in a way. And Mampela, maybe maybe we can discuss that now with you, because I mean, you're co-president of the Club of Rome, but you have been I guess all your life an activist fighting for your rights and your freedom and those of your country. So I would love to hear what you would like to put in the table as inspiration for movement, and how to create that energy, ignite the spirit, and launch something that can change the world actually.
Wow. I bring to this conversation this rich common heritage of Africa. African heritage teaches us that there is no such thing as you and me and the environment, that life is intertwined. We are interconnected and interdependent. And so what happens in the end is affects what happens in Africa and vice versa. And so what inspires me is seeing young people like we have on the screen, who have not only approached this as an activist aspect of their lives, they've embraced being change agents as a way of being. Because the way we manage to liberate our country from colonial conquest and racist apartheid system was to recognize that it starts with us. When you self-liberate, we used to be called non-whites, non-European. When you wake up and you say, this doesn't make sense, I must take back my power to name myself. Whether as a woman, as an indigenous person, you name yourself and thereby claim the rich heritage of your ancestors and the common ancestors that we have. The second point I want to make is I was listening to the tail end of Kate Raworth's presentation on the Doughnut. Now, I come from a culture which is still practiced that way. Doughnut is how we do everything. Every conversation happens in a circle. Even in the home when we're sitting, we sit in a circle because the circle is an enclosure. It reminds us of our interconnectedness. And also it reminds us of the limits, that the more, if we want to do more, we need to expand the circle to be more inclusive. And so the issue that we face today, these planetary emergencies we face, are because we have disentangled ourselves from this intertwined, interconnected web of life. I read a very interesting paper the last few weeks from Nature, which talks about how by creating a more equitable world, reducing the inequalities, we will be able to have decent living standards for every human being on earth at 40% of the energy we consume today. You see how expensive it is to disentangle from this interconnected web of life, that you use a lot more energy, a lot more of everything. But importantly, what makes human beings great is because we are not just responding to what we know. We are not just responding to what we feel. We are not just responding to the now. We are responding at all times from a very deep, holistic place, where in time terms, we are responding in the way that taps into what our ancestors would have wanted us to respond. But we're also already tapping into what our great-grandchildren would like us to have responded. Now, if we think in that way, which is how we have been wired, we as human beings are relational in our essence. And we are at our happiest when we are connected. We are at our happiest when we support others and they support us. And so I believe that the Learning Planet movement is a movement that is bound to succeed because it is doing the natural thing that we have been designed to do. So I take my hat off for the young leaders, for the teachers, and for all of those people who are mobilizing from the bottom, from the top, because it's not one or, it's all of the above. So we are on a very good wicket.
Wow, thank you, Mampela. Thank you very much for this. This is so you're sending us to the moon with this. So I mean, when we look at the complexity of what we are facing, it's a daunting, right? And everyone feels very small and alone compared to what's out there. So beyond the inspiration that ignites the fire, how can we foster that fire and turn it into actions and into solidarity? How can we find other people where we can share the knowledge and understand what is at work and where we can what we can do, and more importantly, what is currently preventing us from doing it, and what is it that we would need to change for connecting ourselves better to our heart and values, as you are all expressing how important it is. How is it that we can confront the system and change and find support? What is preventing us from moving as a person, as a family, as a collective, as a nation, as a world? I think it's a fractal question, and of course, it's not going to be the same answer at the different levels. But I would like to hear maybe if you have some advice or reflection on what is it that we could change that would make a major change in the way that we can empower people to be more active for a sustainable world. I don't know who would like to start. Ha! Selma first.
Yeah, of course, that's a youth question. To be honest, like I have a lot to say about this because like we're missing a lot of things. And like just, you know, the recent COP that we had, we made a lot of proposals. Some of them got rejected as usual, and some of them really got approved. And we had the opportunity to kind of approve the loss and damage, which was something that we have been insisting on for years. And we have never believed that this actually can happen one day, and we did it this scope. So I can tell that a lot of efforts are already being made, and that's the beauty of it. That's what is keeping us always going and just fighting for that concern. Now, as the distinguished panelists said, decision makers need to look deep into our proposals, like please take them seriously, and like because sometimes we really tend to give really good proposals because we're the ones on the ground, we're the ones taking actions, and we know what is going on and what is happening and what is missing, especially for people and activists who are coming from different regions like Africa, the MENA region, Europe, and so on. So we know how to define and identify our challenges, which is why I want to make another point. Like in terms of making proposals and recommendations and proposing them to the decision makers who can actually approve them, and finally, like kind of solve so many issues that we're having already, is to take into account every region and how the activists are kind of identifying these challenges. Because if we really took Europe and then we compare to Africa, the challenges are so different. And if we propose solutions, we have to bear in mind how it's going to be implemented as well, which is also another mistake that we have done last COP, just the recent one, I would say. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that we have all to ask this question: why youth suddenly started this movement? Why suddenly they're all angry? And because, like, apparently it is our future, it is our present who is threatened. And like, honestly speaking, we haven't seen much done for our present, and we're not sure yet for the future. So we don't want to kind of risk it for the future, because we will be the ones blamed for having a messed up future for the upcoming generations. So it is high time for us to kind of really collaborate and take everything seriously, including a drafted proposal. And one more thing, like, when we talk about activists and when we talk about conferences and climate gatherings, we're not there only for the media or for the seats or for drafting. We really want to see everything implemented. And that's actually something that we have been also insisting on last scope, because we were more into accelerating actions. We're more into the implementation of what have been said and written every COP. So we need, again, to relate everything to the regional challenges and the national and continental challenges. And indeed, as you guys are doing here, learning and I would say fighting this global concern is more about learning about planet. It's more about us acting for a planet. And it's about us teaching what is it like to protect this planet. It's not easy, and it's so much pressure and so much anxiety, but it's for that bright future that we're all working so hard for. So it's all about the collaboration that we can make together, and I hope that will be considered.
I could not agree more. As we are co-constructing everything, especially with youth, this is so important. It reminds me of the words of Gutierrez at the Transforming Education Summit in September. He was saying there are 4 ways to engage with youth. One is to ignore them. The second is to have something, but we don't hear them at all. The third one is to hear them politely. But the real one, because we have been doing the others for so many times, the real one is to actually engage with them and listen to what they say and co-construct with them. So thank you so much, Selma. Matthias, what is your take on it?
Yes, I love what Selma said. As a teacher, I try to listen to the children's voices by having class meetings. But the bigger point with that was to address social emotional learning. And I think that's really important to address this way more in education. I think that's under part. I don't know the proper English word, but you get what I mean, probably. By giving children the tools like self-regulation, like empathy, that would really help to understand each other's worlds and to also help self-regulate your own behavior at home and other places to help the planet. But in order to want to help the planet, you have to love the planet first. And I think a lot of educational systems, at least in Western Europe, is now focusing on learning skills and facts instead of set the world central and make the skills work in the context of the world. I was able to listen to Edward de Bono a couple of years ago, and he asked the big audience, what's the biggest problem humankind is facing right now? And everybody said things like climate change and things like that. And he said, no, the biggest problem is poor thinking. We cannot think well enough. And so we need to make the skills and the facts about real life, about how can we be a better human in real life. So I think those points are really important. And also the thing June just mentioned about teachers not having the skills and what can we do about this topic. It's hard to address it. I think governments need to facilitate and help schools with implementing the SDGs. It's not just dropping it at the schools and saying good luck with that while doing mathematics and language. So we need to help schools with giving them the tools to address it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. This is also critical, of course, social emotional learning. And as Jean-Pierre Gou is saying, it's the planet doesn't need to be saved. The planet needs to be loved. And there is this mistake that is constantly coming back, that we need to put aside our hearts to think properly, which has been debunked by science 25 years ago, and wisdom, ancient wisdom, knows that for thousands of years. But we are still in this myth that if we want to solve something, we need to be passionate. Without passion and without emotions, and without emotions, we cannot think properly. And also, you're touching about the anxiety, and the fact that young people, they need to protect themselves from the anxiety which is created by the mess we are in. So all this it resonates very, very, very much. Yun, from your ESD perspective and from everything that you have seen, and being at the same time with what's happening on the ground, but being part of an institution, what is your take on this question? What you would like to see change?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of things, but just maybe pick on what you have just said about the social emotional aspect. From our perspective of ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, that UNESCO has been promoting with a lot of partners, I think it's very important to consider quality of learning. When learning is of good quality, it is something to look at not only the head, but also heart and also hands, so that everyone can understand, think critically in a systemic way, but also feel engaged in solidarity and also wanting to do something to help resolve the problems and concretely take actions. So having said that, I think there are a lot of things which still need to be upscaled at the policy level. Luckily, I think Selma and also Matthias and also Manfela, you reminded that on the ground, there are a lot of great initiatives which are not necessarily capitalized into good policies. And I still believe that this systemic approach is really, really necessary at the upstream level, where UNESCO has a mandate and we are supporting, working together with our ministries and so on, to look into policy, curriculum, teacher development policies. Matthias, I completely agree with you. Teacher needs to be really more supported. And at the same time, we have this bottom-up level, and how to link this upstream and bottom. I think the co-creation or co-construction is the key word which is arising, I think, from our conversation. And we really have to tap into the creativity of teachers, because teachers, even if they are not fully supported, they always come with great solutions and put in place with limited resources and amount of time, which is really encouraging to see. And the young people, they are the ones on the ground, and they are not only learners, but they are also educating and creating this dynamism in the community, not only maybe physically, but also virtually. We also really have to get everyone, connected. And maybe one thing which needs to be really to be promoted is to create more social dialogue in the community level, but also maybe globally, involving policymakers, educators, parents, students, teachers, associations, and to really think critically together, not to dissociate, practices are happening here and policy are happening here. I think we do not have time to lose anymore, unfortunately. And from our end, UNESCO, we are trying to change a little bit our usual way of doing. We are now developing the climate change, we call it greening curriculum guidelines. Instead of working only with a group of experts, we actually changed a bit the order. We started first to talk to young people, and we came up with nice results. We got 17,000 youth voices coming from more than 130 countries, if I'm not mistaken. And they also gave us a lot of alarming messages, but also encouraging messages. And one of the key findings is what I presented in my first part of the intervention. They want to see much more experiential, kind of engaging solution-based learning. And we are now going to the second phase of start working with young people. Also, collecting their good practices, and bring also a group of experts, so this time curriculum developers, and to see how those ideas could be integrated in the actual curriculum. So this is what we are doing this year. There will be a big chunk of work, and I will be really, looking into opportunities of further engaging also with this community. So, well, a lot of things, but there is some hope.
Thank you, June, for that. A lot of hope indeed, and thank you for emphasizing how much it is important to connect the institutions with what's happening on the ground. We need really to work together at every level. I think that's really part of a big answer. Once we had a social scientist that explained to us that innovation is happening in middle grounds, structures that are in between the upper ground and what's happening on the ground. And I think this session and the whole idea of the Learning Planet is around that. How can we create places where people from different organizations and different fields can actually come together to discuss. What you have been doing with greening curricula is really impressive. So this is really bringing a lot of hope. Mampela, as a long life activist and as the co-president of Global Rome, any hat you would like to take to answer those questions? Because you're also bringing people from all kinds of walks of life to try to find solutions.
Absolutely. And I just want to focus on the aspect which we tend to forget. And I'm speaking of myself as a young activist and now a rather mature activist, which is to understand that the status quo continues and persists because there are vested interests that don't want it to change. And so how should we approach this? We should identify where the resistors are, whether they are at the bottom or at the top, and then second step is to then engage them. We cannot afford to exclude. We engage them. And if they don't say yay or nay at the beginning, you just skip at it. I mean, what Selma told us about this loss and damage story is tied to the fact that the IPCC, for many years, the scientists did not allow the voices of indigenous people onto the table. When they did, for the first time, the 2022 IPCC report linked climate damage and change to colonial conquest. And so that enabled the young people who are activists to then link that. So the resistors had no leg to stand on. The science was telling them that, and then history was also calling. So my first point is that we must not underestimate the resistors, but we must have strategies to deal with them in a way that is, in the end, it may take a long time, in the end, the truth always triumphs. The second point I want to make is we must never forget and underestimate the enormous impact of small groups of people. The Learning Planet is now a big movement, relatively speaking. But in the broader scheme of 8 billion people, it's small. But it is powerful because, as Margaret Mead told us, the only thing that's ever changed the world is the small groups of people who are committed. So don't give up. The final point I want to make is, which both links to the resistors and also energizes those who are already in the movement. It is getting the message across that inequality and inequity is expensive. It's expensive for the rich, it's expensive for poor people, and it is expensive for future generations. So promoting global equity is the only way we can have a healthy planet. I've given you the example about energy, that if we had a more equitable planet, we will use only 40% of the energy that we currently are squandering. The 1% of super rich people consume the energy equivalent for 1 billion 1.7 billion people. So you can see that we as a human species were born to live in equity, interconnected, interdependent, because in that way, our footprint on the planet becomes lighter. And so we are now at the stage, I mean, we've got a teacher here, at the stage where the head, the emotions, and the body and the environment are all visibly connected. And it is at that point where now we start dancing this future that we are dreaming of into life. It is exciting. I mean, I'm 75. I've just turned 75 in December. And yet I feel more energy because I can see the future. It is here. Thank you.
Well, I would love to finish here, but we still have 3 minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you, June, Matthijs, and Selma, if you want to, if you're inspired to either respond to or add up on if possible to Pampela, and or provide maybe a few sentences for the people that are watching us. You have been all through your hero's journey. What is it that you would like to? What is the advice that you would like to give to people that are listening to us? Because in a way, you all have been through all kind of things to be there. So I don't know if you have piece of advice that you would like to share. Of course.
Thank you so much. So basically, one thing that I really want to insist on is, please, we need more activists. We need more youth to get involved. Like, we're many somehow, but it's still too much. We still need more people to get involved. Please help us in spreading awareness, because that's exactly what is lacking, and that's why people are yet not taking this global concern seriously. Create environmental mindsets in every region, every continent. We would love to see everyone, like we would love to see this diversity. Climate change actually brought us together, brought youth from different countries and regions together, and it is a challenge, but at least it brought us together. So to fight it, of course. And one more thing is, I hope the communication gap can be fixed, because that's also something that is missing in some continents. The communication gap between the decision makers, youth, and teachers, citizens. We need to fix that. It's like, it's high time to fix it. And one more last thing, I hope I can say this, but please provide more internships and opportunities for youth, because we would love to prove that we can do a lot, and that's through these opportunities. So yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Someone else would like to comment? I think we're getting there. Kristen, we still have more time. So someone else would like to propose a piece of advice? Yes.
Yes, I'm still impressed by Mampela's words. But the fact that just keep on going, and we're getting there, and try to understand each other. I think that's maybe the last sentence is one of the biggest needs needed in the world, to understand each other. And I think empathy and all the things just said, that will bring us further, and that will help our future grandchildren, as Mampela said earlier. We are the only species who can do that. Let's join and do it together.
Absolutely. In front of a burning planet, we have a learning man and woman. That's our superpower. This is how we're going to come out of this mess. Now, thank you all very much for your contribution. I was really privileged to host that panel and hear about everything that you have been sharing from your heart and your head and a little bit of your hands. The conversation continues, and we have so many extraordinary sessions today and the day after. So go to the program, see what you're interested in. There is some sessions for everyone. And Kristen, over to you.
Thanks to Gail. Thanks to you for leading that last discussion and for wrapping up our session on accelerating the environmental transition here this morning on LPTV. This urgent subject continues during the festival week, including on Wednesday from midday to 2 p.m. Central European Time, when the largest student movement in Africa, the All Africa Students' Union, will be at the Students' Panel on Transformative Education and Climate Justice. More information on this event and everything else going on during the festival is available on our website, and you can click on the Discord link on our homepage to send us questions and comments. You can also flash the QR code or click the link to respond to our surveys, and we've just put up our next question for you to take a look at and to respond to. We want you to tell us, what do you want to learn more about protecting? Is it about protecting the environment? Is it about improving mental health? Is it about technology and online learning, acting for social justice? Or perhaps it's all of the above and it's about becoming a planetizen.